Welcome back to the Review the Audit channel. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Today, things could get a little spicy. We're looking at street photography and how the public reacts to it.
Oh yeah, this should be good. It's kind of a hot topic these days with everyone in their phone thinking they're the next Ansel Adams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Privacy and all that. Public versus private. It's all kind of blurry now.
For sure.
Our source material is, you're not going to believe this, is a YouTube video called Unhinged Karen Goes Insane. Crazy Public Meltdown.
Oh boy. Sounds promising.
Right, and it's from a channel called Watching the Watchmen.
Right.
So you know right away it's going to be interesting.
Definitely some strong personalities involved, it seems.
For sure. So picture this. Downtown Tempe, Arizona, sunny January afternoon.
Ooh, yeah. You know it's going to be warm. The perfect setting for tempers to flare.
Exactly. But you know what's funny? The video starts out totally chill. This guy watching the Watchmen, he's just strolling around Tempe, just chatting with people. Tourists, a local business owner, even a street cleaner who's seen his videos before.
Huh. That's kind of cool, actually. Like, he's capturing the everyday vibe of the city.
Totally. He's like
Yeah.
making a digital tapestry or something.
Yeah, I like that. It shows how street photography can be social, too.
Yeah.
Not just some guy lurking in the shadows snapping pics.
Right. It's about connecting with the people and the energy of the city.
Exactly.
But then things get a little dicey when he starts filming outside of Five Guys.
Uh-oh. What happened? Did they kick him out?
Not quite. An employee comes out and starts questioning him, like demanding he get permission to film.
There it is. That whole public versus private space debate. It's such a gray area, especially with cameras everywhere these days.
Totally. Legally, people in public don't really have an expectation of privacy. The businesses, they can set their own rules on their property.
Yeah, it's definitely a tricky situation.
Then he tries filming the outside of a bank, just the exterior, and a bank employee comes out worried about security protocols.
Interesting. So even filming a building can be sensitive.
Right. Like what's okay to film and what's not. It's all changing so fast.
It makes you wonder, how much have those big news events shaped our ideas of what's normal behavior in public?
Good point. Like everything makes everyone a little more cautious these days.
Exactly.
Okay, but here's where things get really wild. He starts filming through the window of a Starbucks, and there's this woman inside who is not having it.
Uh-oh. Here comes the unhinged Karen.
Right. She goes off on him, accusing him of recording her without her consent, even threatens to call the cops.
Part of me understands her reaction. It's kind of creepy to think someone could be filming you without you knowing and then putting it online for the whole world to see.
Yeah, I get it. Like in the age of social media, everyone's a little more anxious about being filmed without consent.
For sure. It's like this constant tension between documenting public life and respecting personal privacy.
Totally. And this is where the video really lives up to its name. Things escalate quickly. Raised voices. The woman actually follows him down the street. You can practically feel the tension through the screen.
Classic miscommunication and heightened emotions. It's like a recipe for disaster, especially when you throw technology into the mix.
And everyone's got a different idea of what's socially acceptable.
It's a melting pot of potential conflict.
But you know what? Throughout this whole thing, the creator stays relatively calm. Even when she's yelling at him, he's trying to explain what he's doing and de-escalate the situation.
Now that's impressive. It takes some serious self-control to stay calm in a situation like that.
Right. De-escalation is so key in those moments. Like, just imagine if he'd started yelling back at her.
Oh man, things would have exploded.
Exactly. And by staying composed and trying to have a conversation, maybe he opens the door for some understanding, even if she doesn't agree with him.
Yeah, maybe she just needed to vent her frustration and have someone hear her out.
Possibly.
It's interesting how often police officers end up mediating these kinds of public disputes.
That's true. And they're dealing with everything from social norms to those ever-present smartphone cameras.
Right. It's a whole new world for law enforcement.
Anyway, the police do eventually arrive, but thankfully things calm down and nobody gets arrested.
Phew. What a roller coaster.
It really is. And it makes you think about all these big issues like freedom of expression, the right to film in public, the evolving definition of privacy.
It's like this seemingly simple interaction opened a Pandora's box of social dilemmas.
Totally. And, if you find these kinds of real-world encounters and discussions as fascinating as we do, you've got to check out the Review the Audit channel.
We dive deep into all sorts of content like this. It's like a rabbit hole of knowledge.
That's a great way to put it. A rabbit hole of knowledge.
Yeah, what I find particularly interesting is how dedicated this creator is to his craft. Like, even in the face of resistance, even hostility, he's committed to documenting this slice of life in Tempe.
Yeah, that's a great point. It takes a certain kind of resilience to keep going when people are giving you a hard time. And you know what? Despite all the drama, there are some genuinely positive interactions in the video too. Like that moment with the street cleaner who recognizes him and actually expresses appreciation for his work.
Oh, that's sweet.
Right. It's like this little reminder that even amidst all the negativity, there's still that human connection and that some people really appreciate these glimpses into everyday life.
I love that. It's like he's showing people the beauty in the mundane.
Exactly. And he's representing the city and its people in this raw, unfiltered way.
And you know what else that moment with the street cleaner shows? That even when you're pushing boundaries, even when you're facing adversity, there's always potential for connection and shared humanity. Yeah. It's a good reminder that we're all just people trying to navigate this crazy world.
Totally. But let's circle back to that video title for a second. Unhinged Karen goes insane. Crazy public meltdown. It's pretty tension-grabbing, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Classic clickbait. You know, playing on that whole Karen stereotype and our fascination with over-the-top reactions.
It definitely gets people clicking, but it also kind of makes you think about the ethics of it all.
Yeah, like how far is too far when it comes to grabbing attention? It's a tough question for content creators.
It really is. Like, you want people to watch your stuff, but you also don't want to be exploiting someone's emotional outbursts just for views.
Exactly. It's a balancing act for sure. And it's something we should all be thinking about as viewers too. Like, are we part of the problem?
That's a good point. So what are some questions we should be asking ourselves when we see these kinds of videos?
Well, first off, is this video actually exploiting someone for views? Like, is it making fun of their distress or presenting a one-sided story?
Right. Because it's easy to get caught up in the drama and the entertainment factor. But we shouldn't forget that there are real people involved.
Absolutely. And in this world of smartphones and social media where everything can go viral in an instant, it's more important than ever to have empathy and understanding. Not just for the people being filmed, but for the creators too.
You know, it's interesting how smartphones and social media have totally changed the game for street photography. Like, everyone's walking around with a high-quality camera in their pocket, constantly documenting their lives.
And it's not always a good thing, right? Like, it's blurred the lines between public and private spaces. What used to be a fleeting moment can now live online forever, potentially affecting someone's reputation or privacy.
That's a really scary thought. It's like the concept of public has taken on this whole new meaning in the digital age.
Totally. And that shift has huge implications for how we think about privacy consent, even the ownership of our own images.
It's a lot to process, for sure. And definitely a conversation we need to keep having as individuals and as a society.
And those questions are only going to get more complex as technology continues to evolve at this crazy pace.
So where do we go from here? Like, what can we do as individuals to navigate this new digital landscape responsibly?
Well, for starters, we need to be more aware of the potential impact of our actions, both online and offline. Every time we take a photo or record a video, we're making choices about what we capture, how we frame it, and how we share it.
It's like we're all content creators now, whether we realize it or not.
Right. And we need to be more mindful about consent, too, especially when we're filming or photographing people in public.
It's easy to get caught up in the moment and forget to ask.
I know, especially when you're trying to capture something fleeting or unexpected. But it's important to remember that even in public, people have a right to privacy and control over their image.
So do we need to stop and ask every single person we film for permission? Like, is that realistic?
Well, it's not always feasible or necessary to get explicit consent in every situation, especially in crowded places. But we can still show respect by being aware of personal boundaries, avoiding intrusive filming techniques, and being upfront about what we're doing.
So, like, if you're filming a street performer, it's generally understood that they're performing for an audience.
Exactly. But if you're filming someone having a private conversation or doing something that suggests they don't want to be recorded, then it's best to respect their privacy.
Use common sense, basically.
Right. And don't forget, the laws around filming in public can vary depending on where you are.
So always check local laws just to be safe.
And if you're ever unsure about whether it's okay to film someone, err on the side of caution and respect their wishes.
Good advice. Speaking of fascinating real-world situations and public interactions, if you're enjoying this deep dive, make sure to subscribe to the Review the Audit channel.
We've got a whole library of captivating content waiting for you.
We really do. And you know what else this whole conversation highlights?
Mm-hmm.
The importance of treating each other with respect, both online and offline.
Absolutely. We need to remember that everyone has their own story, their own perspective, and their own right to privacy and dignity.
Well said. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about the bigger picture. How has technology changed street photography? And how has it redefined what it means to be in public?
It's a great question. It's not just about capturing a moment in time anymore. It's about understanding that those moments can be shared, analyzed, and potentially even used against someone, especially in this age of viral content.
That's true. It's like we're all walking on eggshells a bit.
And it raises all sorts of new ethical questions for photographers, for the people being photographed, and for society as a whole.
So what are some of the key ethical considerations we should be thinking about?
Well, consent is a big one, as we've already talked about.
Yeah.
It's essential to get consent before you film or photograph someone, especially if you plan to share it publicly. But like we said, getting explicit consent isn't always practical. So what are some other ways to be respectful?
Like, how do we balance our desire to document public life with people's right to privacy?
Well, one way is to be mindful of how you're framing your shots. Avoid zooming in on people's faces or capturing them in embarrassing or compromising positions.
Right. It's about being sensitive and putting yourself in their shoes.
Exactly. And be careful about using personal information. If you're sharing photos or videos online, don't include any identifying information about the people in them, like their names, addresses, or workplaces.
Because even if you have good intentions, those images can be shared and reshared without your knowledge. And that information could end up in the wrong hands.
That's right. And always think about the potential impact your images could have on the people in them. Like a photo of someone sleeping on a park bench could be seen as exploitative.
It's a powerful reminder that even though street photography can be a great way to document social issues, it's important to use that power responsibly.
Couldn't agree more. And don't forget, street photography is an art form. And like any art, there's room for interpretation. What one person finds beautiful, another might find offensive.
It's true. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder and all that.
Exactly. So it's important to be open to different perspectives and to talk about these ethical issues respectfully.
It's a great reminder that there's always more to the story than what we see on the surface.
And as viewers, we need to be aware of those nuances and engage with this kind of content thoughtfully.
Like, we're all part of this ongoing conversation about technology, privacy, and public expression.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating and ever-evolving landscape.
Yeah, it's like we have to be more mindful than ever these days.
For sure.
So speaking of all this, what about the legal side of things? What are the actual laws about filming in public?
Well, in the U.S., it's generally legal to film people in public places without their consent. It falls under freedom of speech.
But I'm guessing there are some exceptions.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like, you can't film people where they have a reasonable expectation of privacy. Restrooms, dressing rooms, that kind of thing.
Makes sense. What about filming inside businesses, like on private property?
That's where it gets a little more complicated. Businesses can set their own rules about photography and filming.
So if you're planning to film inside a business, it's best to ask first.
Definitely. And even if it's technically legal, it's always good to be respectful and not film anyone who seems uncomfortable.
It's all about common sense and courtesy.
Exactly. Finding that balance between documenting public life and respecting individual privacy.
It's a tricky balance for sure.
Yeah, it really is. And who knows, maybe all these conversations will lead to new laws or social norms that better reflect our digital world.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, the power of street photography as social commentary.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. It's a genre that can really capture those everyday moments that often go unnoticed.
And it can highlight social issues like inequality or diversity, or just give us a glimpse into the lives of people we might not otherwise see.
Think about photographers like Vivian Mayer or Henri Cartier-Bresson. Their photos captured the essence of their times and gave us a window into the past.
And now with social media, everyone has a platform to share their work and spark conversations.
Exactly. Street photography has become even more powerful as a tool for raising awareness and promoting empathy.
It's pretty amazing. And speaking of amazing content, if you're enjoying this deep dive, make sure to subscribe to the Review the Audit channel.
We explore all kinds of fascinating topics just like this, uncovering those hidden gems of knowledge.
We do. And this whole conversation has got me thinking about the future. Like, imagine if everyone was wearing augmented reality glasses that were constantly recording.
Whoa. Yeah, that would be wild.
It would totally blur the lines between public and private even more. Would we even notice being filmed anymore?
It's a scary thought, but also kind of exciting. Could it lead to more transparency and accountability?
It's hard to say, but it's definitely something to think about.
It's a future full of possibilities, both good and bad.
Well, this has been a super insightful deep dive. Thanks for joining us on the Review the Audit channel as we explored street photography, public reactions, and the crazy world of our digital age.
It's been a pleasure unpacking all these complex issues with you.
It really has. And remember, folks, the world is full of fascinating encounters and thought-provoking discussions. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those conversations going.
Well said.
Thanks for listening to the Review the Audit channel. We'll catch you on our next deep dive.